I found the stumps on a Tuesday morning when I was supposed to be at work, but a burst pipe in the office building had sent everyone home early. The fresh sawdust was still pale yellow against the dark earth, and the chemical smell of chainsaw fuel hung in the air like an accusation. 23 oak trees that had stood on the back 5 acres of my property for over a century were just gone, reduced to raw stumps and tire tracks leading to the road. My name is Ethan Kowalski, and I had purchased this 18-acre property in rural Washington County, Arkansas, about 2 years ago. It was my dream escape from the chaos of Little Rock, a place where I could breathe and maybe eventually build a workshop. The house itself was modest, a renovated farmhouse from the 1940s, but the land was what sold me. Dense forest, a small creek, and enough space that I could not see my neighbors. Or so I thought. I stood there in the clearing, my work boots sinking slightly into the churned soil, trying to process what I was seeing. These were not small trees. These were massive oaks, the kind that took lifetimes to grow. The stumps were easily 3 feet across, some larger. I knelt down and touched one. The wood was still slightly warm from the saw. This had happened recently, very recently. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures, walking the entire area. The tracks were clear, multiple vehicles, probably logging trucks. They had come in from the access road that ran along the eastern edge of my property, the one that technically served several parcels in the area but was maintained by the Pine Valley Homeowners Association. I had never paid much attention to the HOA because my property was grandfathered in from before the neighborhood development went up in 2018. I was not technically a member, though they had tried to get me to join when I moved in. The property line was clear. I had it surveyed when I bought the place. These trees were definitely on my land, at least 200 feet from the nearest HOA property boundary. Someone had come onto my land and cut down my trees without permission. That was timber theft, and in Arkansas, that was a serious crime. I called the sheriff's office first. Deputy Marshal Wallace showed up about 40 minutes later, a weathered man in his 50s with the patient demeanor of someone who had seen everything. He walked the area with me, taking his own photos and notes. "You have any idea who might have done this?" he asked. "Not a clue. I was at work. I only found it because we got sent home early." He knelt by one of the stumps, running his hand over the fresh cut. "This was professional work, not some kids with a chainsaw. This was a logging crew with equipment." He stood up and looked at the tire tracks. "Big trucks, too. Somebody paid good money for this operation." "Can you find out who?" "I will make some calls. There are only so many logging companies in the area. Somebody will know something." He looked at me seriously. "Mr. Kowalski, these are mature oaks. Do you have any idea what they are worth?" I shook my head. "Depending on the quality, you are looking at anywhere from $1,500 to $3,000 per tree. Maybe more. That is $40,000 to $50,000 worth of timber, possibly more." My stomach dropped. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. This is not petty theft. This is a felony. Grand theft and criminal trespass at minimum." He made a few more notes. "I'm going to file a report. You should contact a lawyer and get your property surveyed again, just to have the documentation. And maybe invest in some trail cameras if you have not already." After Deputy Wallace left, I walked back to the house in a daze. $50,000. Someone had stolen $50,000 worth of trees from my property. I felt violated in a way I had never experienced before. This was not just theft. This was destruction. Those trees had been here long before I was born, and now they were gone forever. I spent the rest of the afternoon making calls. My lawyer, Richard Chen, was shocked when I told him what happened. He advised me to document everything and promised to look into it. I called my insurance company, though they told me that most homeowner policies did not cover timber theft unless I had specific forestry insurance, which I did not. I called the Arkansas Forestry Commission, who said they would send someone out to assess the damage and help with the investigation. That evening, I sat on my back porch with a beer, staring at the gap in the tree line where there should have been forest. My dog, a German shepherd named Max, sat next to me, sensing my mood. My phone rang. It was Deputy Wallace. "Mr. Kowalski, I have some information for you. I tracked down the logging company, outfit out of Fayetteville called Timberline Solutions. They confirmed they did the job. Did they say who hired them? That is the interesting part. They said they were hired by the Pine Valley Homeowners Association. They have a signed contract and everything. I sat up straight. The HOA? Why would the HOA hire someone to cut down trees on my property? That is what I would like to know. According to the logging company, they were told it was HOA property and they were clearing it for development. They paid up front, no questions asked. The proceeds from the timber sale went directly to the HOA's account. But it is not their property. It is mine. I have the deed. I know. That is why this is criminal. I'm going to contact the HOA board tomorrow. You might want to come with me. Oh, I will definitely be there. Good. I will call you with a time. He paused. Mr. Kowalski, one more thing. The logging company said the timber brought in $53,000. The HOA kept all of it. I could barely sleep that night. My mind was racing with questions. How could the HOA think they had the right to cut down trees on my property? Had they made an honest mistake with the property lines? But even if they had, would not they have contacted me first? And why would they need $53,000 so badly that they would sell timber? The next morning I drove to the Pine Valley HOA office, which was located in a small building near the neighborhood's community center. Deputy Wallace was already there, along with another officer. The HOA president, a woman named Brenda Sutherland, was waiting inside with 2 other board members. Brenda was exactly what I expected. Mid-50s, blonde hair styled in that specific way that screamed HOA president, wearing a pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. She smiled when we walked in, but it did not reach her eyes. Mr. Kowalski, Deputy Wallace, please have a seat. I understand there has been some confusion about the timber clearing. Confusion? I stayed standing. You cut down 23 trees on my property without permission and sold them. That is not confusion. That is theft. Her smile tightened. I think you are mistaken about the property lines. The trees in question were on HOA common land. No, they were not. I pulled out my phone and showed her the survey documents my lawyer had emailed me that morning. This is my property survey from 2024. The trees were at least 200 feet inside my property line. There is no confusion. She barely glanced at the phone. Our records show differently. Deputy Wallace stepped in. Mrs. Sutherland, I have seen Mr. Kowalski's property survey and his deed. The trees were on his land. The logging company confirmed they removed 23 oaks and the proceeds were $53,000, paid directly to the HOA. I need to see your documentation that gave you the authority to clear that land. Brenda's face flushed slightly. We had a site survey done last month. It clearly showed that the area was within HOA boundaries. I need to see that survey. It is in our records. I will have to pull it. Please do. She stood up stiffly and left the room. One of the other board members, a nervous-looking man in his 40s, cleared his throat. I am sure this is just a misunderstanding. We would never intentionally— Where did the money go? I interrupted. He blinked. Excuse me? $53,000. Where did it go? He glanced at the other board member, a woman who looked like she wanted to be anywhere else. It went into the HOA operating fund. We have been raising money for the new community pool. So you stole my trees to build a pool. We did not steal anything. We thought it was HOA land. Then why did not you contact me? My property borders that area. Even if you thought it was yours, would not you check with the neighbors first before cutting down 24 trees? He had no answer for that. Brenda came back with a folder. She pulled out a document and handed it to Deputy Wallace. He studied it for a long moment, then looked up at her. Mrs. Sutherland, this survey is from 2019. It predates Mr. Kowalski's purchase and his survey. And unless I am reading this wrong, it does not actually show the area in question as being within HOA boundaries. It shows it as part of the adjacent parcel, which is now Mr. Kowalski's property. Her face went pale. That cannot be right. We were assured. Who assured you? Our property management company reviewed the boundaries. What company? Prestige Property Management. Deputy Wallace made a note. I'm going to need their contact information. Mrs. Sutherland, I have to inform you that we are investigating this as a case of timber theft and criminal trespass. The value of the timber exceeds $5,000, which makes this a Class B felony under Arkansas Code. I am not arresting anyone today, but I strongly suggest you consult with an attorney." The color drained from all three board members' faces. The nervous man spoke up. "A felony? But we did not know. It was an honest mistake." "That will be for the prosecutor to decide," Deputy Wallace said. "But I can tell you right now, ignorance is not a defense when you are talking about $53,000. I felt a grim satisfaction watching them squirm, but it did not bring back my trees. Deputy Wallace and I left shortly after. Outside, he turned to me. "They're going to try to settle this quickly. They know they are screwed. Make sure your lawyer handles everything from here on out. Do not talk to them directly. Do not accept any offers without running it by him first." "What happens now?" "I'm going to finish the investigation, talk to this property management company, and submit everything to the prosecutor's office. They will decide whether to file charges. In the meantime, your lawyer should file a civil suit. You are entitled to treble damages for timber theft in Arkansas." "Treble damages?" "Triple. If they stole $53,000 in timber, you can sue for $160,000, plus attorney fees and costs." I drove home with my head spinning. This had escalated so quickly. Yesterday morning I had been worried about a burst pipe at work. Now I was in the middle of a criminal investigation involving a felony and potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. Richard Chen called me that afternoon. "I've been doing some research on your HOA. This is not the first time they have had problems. There was a lawsuit 3 years ago from another homeowner about improper fees, and I found some interesting information about their finances." "Like what?" "Like they are broke. According to their public filings, they have been operating in the red for 2 years. The neighborhood pool project was supposed to be funded by increased dues, but not enough homeowners paid up. They were desperate for money. So they stole my trees. It looks that way. I am drafting a complaint now. We are going to sue for the full treble damages, plus punitive damages for willful misconduct. I'm also going to request an injunction preventing them from spending any more of the timber proceeds until this is resolved." "How long will this take?" "Months, probably. Maybe a year or more if they fight it. But based on what you have told me, we have a strong case. The property survey is clear, the deed is clear, and they have admitted to taking the timber and keeping the money." "What about criminal charges?" "That is up to the prosecutor. Deputy Wallace seems to be taking this seriously, which is good. If they charge the board members, it will put more pressure on the HOA to settle the civil case." Over the next few days, the story started spreading through the community. I was not the one spreading it, but apparently word had gotten out from the HOA office. My phone started ringing with calls from neighbors I barely knew. Some were sympathetic, others were angry at me for making trouble for the HOA. One call in particular stood out. It was from a woman named Patricia Garrison, who lived about a mile away. Her voice was shaky when I answered. "Mr. Kowalski, you do not know me, but I heard about what happened with your trees. Something similar happened to me last year." I sat up. "What do you mean?" "The HOA cleared some brush from what they said was common land behind my property. I did not think much of it at the time, but now I am wondering if it was actually my land. They never asked permission or told me they were doing it." "Did they take any trees?" "Some small ones, nothing like what happened to you, but still, I never authorized it." "You should get your property surveyed and maybe talk to the sheriff's office. I am scared to make trouble. My husband and I are older, and we do not want problems with the HOA. They already fine people for every little thing." "Mrs. Garrison, if they stole from you, you have a right to know. And if they did it to both of us, they might have done it to others." She was quiet for a moment. "You are right. I will look into it. Thank you." After I hung up, I wondered how many other homeowners the HOA had taken advantage of. If they were desperate for money and thought they could get away with it, what else had they done? A week later, I got a call from Richard Chen. "We have a problem. The HOA filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy." "They what?" "They declared bankruptcy. It is a reorganization filing, which means they are trying to restructure their debts while staying operational. It also means all lawsuits against them are automatically stayed until the bankruptcy is resolved. So I cannot sue them." "You can, but it has to go through bankruptcy court now." We will have to file a proof of claim and get in line with their other creditors." Are you kidding me? They steal my trees, sell them, and now they get to hide behind bankruptcy? It is frustrating, I know, but this actually might work in our favor. In bankruptcy, the trustee is going to look at all of their recent transactions. When they see that the HOA received $53,000 from selling timber that was not theirs, they are going to have questions. And if the criminal investigation results in charges, the bankruptcy judge is not going to be sympathetic. What about the money? Can they still spend it? Not without the bankruptcy trustee's approval. Everything is frozen now. That is actually good for us because it means they cannot use the money for the pool or anything else. It is all going to be part of the bankruptcy estate. I felt like I was drowning in legal complications. This had started as simple theft and had turned into a nightmare of civil suits, criminal investigations, and now bankruptcy court. The next development came 2 weeks later. Deputy Wallace called to tell me that the prosecutor's office had decided to file charges against Brenda Sutherland and 2 other board members. They were each charged with 1 count of felony theft by receiving stolen property and 1 count of criminal trespass. The charges carried a maximum sentence of 10 years and a fine of up to $10,000. They are going to be arraigned next month, Deputy Wallace told me. You will probably be called as a witness if this goes to trial. Do you think it will? Hard to say. If they are smart, they will take a plea deal. But some people would rather fight than admit they were wrong. The arraignment was scheduled for a Friday morning at the Washington County Courthouse in Fayetteville. I took the day off work to be there. The courtroom was small, and there were only a handful of people present. Brenda Sutherland sat with her lawyer, looking smaller and older than she had in the HOA office. The other 2 board members were also there with their own attorneys. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Judge Harriet Morrison, read the charges aloud. When she got to the part about the value of the stolen timber, her eyebrows went up slightly. $53,000 in timber? She looked at the defendants. How do you plead? All 3 entered pleas of not guilty. Their lawyers argued that this was a civil matter that had been criminalized, that there was no criminal intent, and that any mistakes were the result of bad advice from the property management company. The prosecutor, a young woman named Sarah Vance, countered that the defendants had a responsibility to verify property lines before taking such drastic action, and that their failure to do so did not excuse the theft. Judge Morrison set a trial date for 4 months out and released all 3 defendants on their own recognizance. As we filed out of the courtroom, Brenda's lawyer approached me. "Mr. Kowalski, my client would like to discuss a settlement." "Tell your client to talk to my lawyer. We understand you are angry, but this has been blown out of proportion. Mrs. Sutherland is a retired school teacher. She has no criminal record. She made an honest mistake. An honest mistake that cost me $53,000 in trees that cannot be replaced. We are prepared to make you whole. The HOA will return the full proceeds from the timber sale, plus a reasonable amount for damages." My lawyer's asking for treble damages. That is the law in Arkansas for timber theft. His face tightened. "That's excessive. No jury is going to award you that much." "Then I guess we will find out at trial." I walked away before he could say anything else. I knew I was being stubborn, but I was angry. These people had come onto my land, destroyed something irreplaceable, and now they wanted to pay me back like it was no big deal. It was not about the money anymore. It was about accountability. The bankruptcy case dragged on. Richard Chen filed our claim, detailing the theft and demanding $160,000 in damages. The bankruptcy trustee, a sharp-eyed lawyer named Michael Torres, started digging into the HOA's finances. What he found was damning. Richard called me with an update a month after the arraignment. The trustee found that the HOA board approved the timber clearing without getting a proper survey or legal opinion on the property boundaries. There are emails showing that Brenda Sutherland knew there was a question about whether the land belonged to the HOA or to you, but she decided to move forward anyway because they needed the money for the pool. She knew. She knew there was a question, and she went ahead anyway. That is willful misconduct, Ethan. That is not a mistake. That is deliberate. My anger, which had been simmering for weeks, boiled over. So she gambled that she could get away with it. Exactly. And she lost. The trustee is recommending that the bankruptcy court approve our claim in full because the debt was incurred through willful and malicious conduct. That means it cannot be discharged in bankruptcy. Even if the HOA reorganizes, they are going to owe you that money. What about the criminal case? I talked to Sarah Vance. She said Brenda's lawyer is trying to negotiate a plea deal, but she is not interested in letting them off easy. She thinks they should see jail time. The next few months were a waiting game. The criminal trial was postponed twice as both sides negotiated. The bankruptcy case moved at a glacial pace. I tried to focus on work and life, but it was hard not to obsess over the case. Every time I went into my backyard and saw the Stumps, I felt the anger rise again. Patricia Garrison called me again in June. She had gotten her property surveyed, and it turned out that the HOA had cleared trees from her land as well. Not as many as mine, but enough to be worth several $1,000s. She had filed a police report and contacted a lawyer. 2 other homeowners came forward with similar stories. It turned out the HOA had been playing fast and loose with property boundaries for years, always assuming that homeowners would not check or would not care. The prosecutor added Patricia's case to the charges against the board members. Now they were facing multiple counts. The pressure was mounting. In July, Deputy Wallace called me. Brenda Sutherland took a plea deal. What kind of deal? She pleaded guilty to 1 count of felony theft. The other charges were dropped. She's going to serve 2 years in prison, suspended to 1 year, and 5 years of probation. She also has to pay restitution to all the victims. 1 year? She cooperated with the investigation and provided evidence against the other board members. The prosecutor thought it was worth it to get her testimony. What about the others? They are still fighting it, but without Brenda on their side, they do not have much of a case. My guess is they will take deals too. He was right. By August, all 3 board members had pleaded guilty. Brenda got the lightest sentence because she cooperated. The other 2 each got 18 months in prison, suspended to 6 months, plus probation and restitution. The bankruptcy case concluded in September. The trustee's report was scathing. He found that the HOA had been mismanaged for years, with board members authorizing expenditures without proper oversight and ignoring basic legal requirements. The timber theft was just the most egregious example. The court approved our claim for $160,000 plus attorney fees and costs. Patricia Garrison and the other homeowners also had their claims approved. The problem was that the HOA did not have enough money to pay everyone. The $53,000 from my timber was the largest asset they had. The court ordered it to be distributed to the victims proportionally, with the rest of the debts to be paid out over time through increased dues or assessments on the homeowners. Richard Chen explained it to me over the phone. You are going to get the $53,000 immediately. The rest will come in payments over the next 5 years. The HOA is going to have to assess all the homeowners in the subdivision to cover the damages. So the homeowners are going to end up paying for what the board did? Essentially, yes. That is how HOAs work. The homeowners are collectively responsible for the organization's debts. It did not feel fair, but I understood it. The homeowners had elected the board members. They had trusted them to manage the association responsibly, and the board had failed spectacularly. The check for $53,000 arrived in October. I deposited it and tried to feel some sense of satisfaction, but mostly I just felt tired. This had been going on for almost 8 months now, and while I was getting some of my money back, I would never get my trees back. Those oaks had been growing for over 100 years, and they were gone in an afternoon. I used some of the money to install a proper fence along my property line with clear markers and no trespassing signs. I also bought several trail cameras and motion sensors. I was not going to let this happen again. The homeowners in the Pine Valley subdivision were furious. When they started receiving bills for special assessments to cover the restitution payments, they revolted. There were angry meetings, accusations, and threats of lawsuits. Some homeowners tried to argue that they should not have to pay for the board's mistakes, but legally, they did not have a choice. The HOA was a collective entity, and they were all part of it. Several homeowners reached out to me, apologizing for what had happened. A few tried to blame me, saying I should have just accepted a smaller settlement and not pushed for the full damages. I did not engage with those people. I'd done nothing wrong. I had been the victim, and I had every right to seek full compensation under the law. Patricia Garrison called me in November. "I wanted to thank you. If you had not fought back, I never would have known what they did to me. And I talked to the other homeowners who came forward. We all agreed that you did the right thing. I am sorry you had to go through this too." "Me too, but at least they are being held accountable. Brenda Sutherland reported to jail yesterday. I heard she cried the whole way there." I did not feel any satisfaction from that either. I had not wanted anyone to go to jail. I had just wanted my trees back and to be made whole. But the trees were gone, and no amount of money or justice could change that. By December, the dust was starting to settle. The HOA had new leadership, elected in an emergency vote by the homeowners. They were younger, more transparent, and determined to rebuild trust. The pool project was canceled. The money that had not been seized for restitution was used to pay down other debts and build up a proper reserve fund. I received my first quarterly payment from the ongoing restitution plan. It was for $8,000. At this rate, I would be fully compensated in about 3 years, not 5. The new HOA board had decided to prioritize the victim payments to try to repair the damage done by their predecessors. I used some of the money to plant new trees. Not oaks. Those would take a century to reach the size of what I had lost, but fast-growing maples and pines that would at least fill in the gap in my tree line. I planted them with Max's help, or at least his company. He mostly just dug holes in the wrong places and got in the way, but it felt good to be putting something back into the land. Richard Chen called me in January, almost exactly a year after I had found the stumps. "I have some news. The property management company that advised the HOA on the boundaries is going out of business. They are facing multiple lawsuits from other clients, not just this case. Turns out they were giving bad advice all over the state." "Are we going after them too?" I thought about it, but honestly, they are judgment-proof at this point. They do not have any assets. We got more from the HOA than we would ever get from them. So they just get to walk away. Unfortunately, yes, but their reputation is destroyed. No one will hire them again. Sometimes that is punishment enough. I was not sure I agreed, but I was too tired to fight anymore. I had spent a year of my life dealing with this mess. I had gotten most of my money back, the people responsible had been held accountable, and I had done what I could to prevent it from happening to anyone else. That had to be enough. The final payment came in March 2027, earlier than expected. The HOA had refinanced some debt and used the savings to pay off the restitution obligations. Richard called to tell me that the case was officially closed. "You did good, Ethan. You stood up for yourself, and you won. A lot of people would have just rolled over." I did not feel like I had a choice. You always have a choice. You chose to fight. That matters. After I hung up, I walked out to my backyard with Max. The new trees were starting to fill in, though they were still small compared to what had been there before. The stumps of the old oaks were slowly rotting away, covered in moss and mushrooms. In a few years, they would be gone completely, decomposed back into the soil. I thought about what Richard had said. I had chosen to fight, and I had won. But what had I really won? Money, yes. Justice, sort of. Accountability, definitely. But the trees were still gone. The peace and quiet I had moved out here for had been shattered. My trust in institutions like HOAs had been destroyed. But I had also learned something. I had learned that I could stand up for myself, that I did not have to be a victim, that when someone wronged me, I had the power to fight back and make them pay. Not everyone had that power or that knowledge. A lot of people would have been intimidated by the HOA, by the legal system, by the complexity of it all. They would have accepted a lowball settlement and moved on. I had not. And because I had not, other victims had come forward. Patricia Garrison had gotten justice too. The homeowners in Pine Valley had gotten a wake-up call about the importance of oversight and accountability. The system had worked, slowly and imperfectly, but it had worked. Max barked at something in the woods, probably a squirrel. I smiled and threw a stick for him. He bounded after it, all enthusiasm and joy, completely unconcerned with property lines or HOAs or justice. Sometimes I envied him. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Patricia Garrison. The new HOA board is hosting a community meeting next week to discuss transparency and governance reforms. They asked if you would come and speak. I told them I would ask. I stared at the message for a long moment. Part of me wanted to say no. I was done with the HOA. I had gotten my money and my justice, and I just wanted to move on with my life. But another part of me knew that Patricia was right to ask. If I did not show up and share what I had learned, the next board might make the same mistakes. The cycle would continue. I texted back, "I will be there." The meeting was held on a Wednesday evening at the community center. I was nervous as I drove over. I'd never been much of a public speaker, and I was not sure what I was going to say. But when I walked in and saw the crowd, easily 100 people, I realized that this mattered to them. They wanted to understand what had gone wrong and how to prevent it from happening again. The new HOA president, a man in his 30s named Marcus Chen, no relation to my lawyer, welcomed everyone and explained the purpose of the meeting. Then he introduced me. Mr. Kowalski is here tonight because he was directly affected by the mismanagement of our previous board. He fought for accountability and justice, and because of his efforts, we are all here tonight trying to do better. Mr. Kowalski, would you like to say a few words? I stood up and walked to the front of the room. 100 pairs of eyes were on me. I cleared my throat. I am not going to lie to you. What happened to me was devastating. I lost trees that had been on my land for over a century. I lost money. I lost time. And I lost my trust in HOAs. For a while, I was angry enough to want to see everyone involved go to jail forever. But over the past year, I have realized something. The problem was not the HOA system itself. The problem was a lack of accountability and oversight. I looked around the room. People were listening intently. Your previous board made decisions without checking property lines, without consulting experts, and without asking questions. They were desperate for money, and they took shortcuts. And when those shortcuts turned out to be illegal, they tried to cover it up instead of owning up to their mistakes. That is what turned a simple boundary dispute into criminal charges. I paused, gathering my thoughts. But here's the thing. You all had a role in this too. And I do not say that to blame you. I say it because it is important to understand. You elected these board members. You trusted them to do the right thing. And when you saw problems, most of you stayed silent. Not because you were bad people, but because it is easier to trust that someone else is handling things than to ask hard questions. A few people shifted uncomfortably, but no one protested. So my advice to you is this: do not make the same mistake again. Ask questions, demand transparency, show up to meetings, review the financials, and if something does not feel right, speak up. The only way an HOA works is if everyone participates. If you just elect a board and walk away, you are setting yourself up for the same problems. I looked at Marcus Chen. Your new board seems like they want to do things right, support them, hold them accountable, and make sure they have the resources and expertise they need to make good decisions. I sat down to scattered applause. It was not a standing ovation, but I had not expected one. I had said what needed to be said. After the meeting, several people came up to thank me. Some apologized for what had happened. A few asked specific questions about the legal process. Patricia Garrison gave me a hug. Thank you for doing that. I know it was not easy. It was not, but it needed to be done. Driving home that night, I felt lighter than I had in months, maybe even a year. I had turned a corner somehow. The anger was still there, deep down, but it was not consuming me anymore. I had fought my fight and won. I had spoken my truth, and now I could finally start to move on. Over the next few months, I focused on rebuilding, not just the tree line, but my life. I spent more time in my workshop, building furniture and fixing things. I adopted a second dog, a rescue mutt named Sally, who kept Max company. I started dating someone I met at a hardware store, a woman named Paula Grayson, who thought my story was crazy but admired that I had stood up for myself. Paula was an architect, and she had her own horror stories about dealing with HOAs and building codes and bureaucracy. We bonded over our shared frustration with systems that were supposed to help but often just got in the way. She was smart and funny, and she made me laugh, which I had not done enough of over the past year. In June, I got a call from Deputy Wallace. I had not heard from him in months. "Mr. Kowalski, I wanted to give you an update. Brenda Sutherland was released from jail last week. She served her full sentence without incident." "How long was she in?" 6 months. She got credit for good behavior and time served. She's on probation now for the next 5 years." "How's she doing?" "I do not know. I heard she moved away, out of state. Probably trying to start over somewhere where people do not know her story." "I hope she learned something from all this." "Me too. But in my experience, people like that usually just blame everyone else for their problems." After I hung up, I thought about Brenda Sutherland. She had been the face of everything that went wrong, but she was also a human being who made mistakes. Bad mistakes, illegal mistakes, but mistakes nonetheless. I hoped Deputy Wallace was wrong. I hoped she had learned something. I hoped she would not hurt anyone else the way she had hurt me and the other homeowners. But that was not my problem anymore. My problem was figuring out how to enjoy the life I had built out here in the woods, even with the scars and the stumps and the memories of what had been taken from me. Paula came over that weekend, and we spent Saturday planting more trees. She had ideas about landscaping and natural growth patterns, and she sketched out a plan for how the back 5 acres could look in 10 or 20 years. It was ambitious and beautiful, and it made me excited about the future in a way I had not been since I found the Stumps. "You are going to have an amazing forest back here someday," she said, wiping dirt off her hands. "Not the same as what you lost, but something new and just as beautiful. It will take years. The best things always do." We stood there in the clearing, looking at the small saplings we had planted. Max and Sally were running circles around us, chasing each other through the tall grass. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. In that moment, I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Peace. The final chapter of the story came in August, almost 2 years after I first found the Stumps. The Pine Valley HOA sent me a letter. Inside was a formal apology signed by the entire new board, along with a plaque that read, "In recognition of your courage in holding us accountable and helping us build a better community." I did not know what to do with the plaque. Part of me wanted to throw it away. I had not fought for recognition or praise. I had fought because I had been wronged and I wanted justice, but Paula convinced me to keep it. "It is not about you," she said. "It is about them acknowledging what they did wrong and committing to do better. That matters." She was right. I hung the plaque in my workshop, where I could see it while I worked. It was a reminder that sometimes the system works, sometimes people are held accountable, sometimes justice prevails. Not always, not quickly, and not perfectly, but sometimes. I thought about everything that had happened since that Tuesday morning when I came home early and found the Stumps. The shock and anger, the investigation and lawsuits, the bankruptcy and criminal trials, the restitution payments and the replanting, the community meeting and the apology. It had been a long, exhausting journey, but I had learned something important. I had learned that I could fight for myself, that I did not have to accept being a victim, that even when the odds seemed stacked against me, even when I was up against an organization with lawyers and money and power, I could stand my ground and win. Not everyone gets that chance. Not everyone has the resources or the knowledge or the sheer stubbornness to fight a battle like that. I was lucky in a lot of ways. I had a good lawyer. I had a thorough deputy who took my case seriously. I had documentation that clearly showed I was in the right, and I had the financial stability to wait out a long legal process without going broke. But I also had something else. I had the conviction that what happened to me was wrong, and that someone needed to pay for it, and I had refused to let that conviction waver, even when it would have been easier to take a small settlement and move on. Standing in my workshop, looking at that plaque, I felt proud. Not because I had won, but because I had fought, because I had stood up for myself and for the other homeowners who had been victimized, because I had forced a broken system to acknowledge its mistakes and do better. The trees would grow, the stumps would rot away, the memories would fade, but the lesson would remain. I had learned that I was stronger than I thought, that I could face down intimidation and complexity and bureaucracy and come out the other side, that I did not have to accept injustice just because fighting it was hard, And that was worth more than $53,000. That was worth more than $160,000. That was worth everything. Max barked from outside, probably wanting dinner. I smiled and headed for the door. The past was behind me. The trees were growing, and I had a life to live. The stumps were still there, slowly decomposing into the earth, but they did not hurt to look at anymore. They were just reminders of what I had lost and what I had gained. The oaks were gone, but I was still here, and I was stronger for it. That was enough.